teacher. You saw more in me than I could see. You helped the struggle in me. You planted seeds still growing in me. You educated me. Thank you, my Mary's I teacher. Faith and courage. Thank you, my Mary's I teacher. You're a real one.
Hi, good day. My name is Frankie McGibbon from the class of 85. It is such a great pleasure to be back here again on the Mirror's Eye podcast series, reintroducing myself. Today, though, we have our Teachers Edition, and this is such a pleasure. Our special guests for today are Mrs. Angela Nugent Mitchell, Mrs. Elaine Pickersgill Rolston, and Mr. Dennis Clark. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, sir, for having us.
So let us start being reacquainted with you guys. Let's start with some introductions, starting with you, Miss Pickersgill.
I'm Elaine Pickersgill. I got married to a fellow St. Mary School classmate, so I'm now Elaine Ralston.
Okay.
I taught at St. Mary School between September 1980 and September 1982, and I was a teacher of Spanish. After I left St. Mary High School, I went straight to UWI because I left in order to go to UWI. And family, during that time I started my family. I am the mother of a son and 2 daughters. In terms of what I do for fun, I love trivia. So any quiz, any competition of that kind that's academic, I'll be involved. And I do not yet, and I say yet, have any grandchildren, even though my 3 offsprings are all adults. I do not yet have any grandchildren.
Excellent.
But I'm
was it
sure.
only only Spanish that you taught when you were there?
At St. Mary, yeah, just Spanish.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Miss Nugent.
Okay. Hi guys, I'm Angela Nugent. When I was at St. Mary High School,
Yes.
I taught there during the years September 1982 to July 1989. I taught the business subjects, shorthand, typewriting, and office procedures.
Okay.
My family, I got married in about 1989, and I have a son and a daughter and 2 adorable grandchildren, a boy and a girl.
Okay.
My hobbies, I like baking, sewing, gardening, going on excursions. Anywhere you're going, I'm on the trip. I like sharing and caring for others. And I like to do activities. I do activities at my church as well. So the caring aspect of it, I take care of my grandchildren when they come home from school in the afternoons.
Very nice. Thank you.
Okay. That's it for
Mr.
now.
Clark.
Your name is Dennis Melbourne Clark. I joined the staff at St. Mary School in 1978. I got there at the invitation of Edwin Cargill. He had started what's called a yellow shift. I don't know if you remember that. And on that yellow shift, there were some outstanding athletes, you know, and I was the person who was responsible for those athletes there. But the subject I taught was industrial arts. And I was at my desk one day, and Mr. Edwin Cargill called me from upstairs. The secretary came to me and said, Dennis Clark, the principal wants to see you now. And I went up there, and I saw a young lady sitting in the guest chair. And Mr. Cargill said to me, Mr. Clark, this young lady is a past student. Her name is Carol Hunter. I would like for you to make her a good teacher as you are. I said, certainly will, sir. And he introduced her to me, and we went off. and I took her down to the staff room. And there was this guy, he's now a big lawyer, you know. And I said to him, he was sitting right behind me, I said, you can't stay there any longer. And because I have a guest for this seat. And he politely left. Malcolm Rowe. And Carl sat there. Long and short, I married her.
Okay.
I married her. We have two
Nice.
kids. We have two girls. And I tell you, Franklin, I'm fortunate to have two grandchildren too. You know? And I'm living in the glory days of the bottom staff room, where the truth is, if you were not bright, you were not witty, you didn't have the pluck. In fact, you know, we defied the status quo. The bottom staff room defied the status quo of what the teaching staff of St. Mary's School was. But we produced the best results. We were in charge of everything in the school. We were in charge of, name it. And we went close to even winning the school challenge quiz, you know. And cricket, name it. I taught lawn tennis and badminton, you know, and to staff and students. So I had a wonderful time there. But I left and joined the staff at the Ministry of Education as an education officer with responsibility for industrial education throughout the country.
Yes.
And today I'm a retired man after some 20 years. My favorite thing now is I joined my wife. We are serious Jeopardy watchers.
Okay.
But for me, I still do badminton and lawn tennis.
Very nice. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Thank you, guys.
But just to remind you, I'm still a big farmer now. All these years, I'm a big farmer.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So I want to start again with you, Miss Pickersgill. And you notice I'm calling you the names that we knew you from at school, right? Even though you're married. And so please apologize to your husbands for us, because it's just meant for the students. So just want to invite you to briefly share a favorite memory from the classroom life at St. Mary High.
Wow. There are quite a few, you know, but
yes.
I recall one day, well, is this in relation to children or in general?
Just in general.
Okay. I recall in 1981, Mr. Cargill, best school leader there ever was, called me and he said, Ms. Pickersgill, we have an invitation for someone from the Spanish department to do an examination with the hope of getting an OS fellowship. And he said, your teacher, that I'm sure it was Miss Lambert, recommended you. So are you game? And I said, yes, sir. So the long and short of it is that I went and I did the examination and I got selected in the 10 persons that were selected from across the island to go to Venezuela to study on this OS fellowship. And it was life-changing for me. It was really, really awesome. It built my confidence in terms of the use of the language. And I managed to develop a camaraderie that today still exists with several of the individuals from the other Caribbean islands who were on that fellowship with us in Caracas.
Nice.
And that for me was very, very outstanding. If we were to look at something that happened that really grabbed my attention in terms of the teaching learning process, I was fortunate to have had some very wonderful students who were sharp and students who knew what they're about. And there are people like Jean Ramdon who would always be there ensuring that, oh, miss, you had given us that to do. And I recall one day, I'd given them a bit of homework and the day in question, I didn't remember the homework. And apparently a lot of the children hadn't done it. And one person who will remain nameless said to me, Miss, you forgot that you gave us homework. At which point the class, everybody turned on her.
Yes.
And I felt weird because they really were getting under her skin because, as I said, about 80% of them hadn't done it. But
Okay.
we managed to deal with that matter. And what I did was to give them some time during class in order to finish the homework. But I
Okay,
gave
good.
special marks to those few who had done it ahead of time. But
Thank you.
children will be children.
Indeed. To you, Miss Nugent.
Okay. One of my memories is I taught grade 10 and 11.
Yes.
And it so happened my youngest sister ended up in one of the classes, 10A for that matter. And I was the teacher for the typewriting class. Now, my poor little sister came home after the first class, and she used to call me Stangy, short for Sister Angela Stangy.
Yes.
And she said, Stangy, I think I don't need to be in your class, I need to go into a different teacher's class. I said, why? Stangy, every time I go to class and you say you're going to have a test or you're going to give a test or an exam, the children bombard me. They want me to tell them what it is that they're going to get in the test and the exams.
That's
and
funny.
when they get the test and you mark it, what grade it is that they got. I said, you don't have to be afraid because as you see, Stangy doesn't take home any schoolwork. She leaves everything at school.
Yes.
So you cannot see any paper to look at. You cannot to tell them what exam, what test, or what grade they have achieved.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about that. And in class, it was really fun because whenever I asked any questions, they were always looking at her, expecting that she ought to know the answer. And poor little thing didn't know. She's learning just as they were learning.
Yes, yes.
And I had to protect her from the pressure that they would bring on her because they wanted to know all of that information and she didn't have a clue what was happening. So, at home, she called me Stangy, but in the classroom, it's Miss Nugent.
Yes.
And they look at you and say, huh? But, that was one of my best memories that I had in the classroom.
Indeed. Mr. Clark. Thank you, Miss Nugent.
Well, frankly, let me tell you, when I came to St. Mary's School in 1978, I found a young boy, 12-year-old, named Desmond Campbell, and I taught him technical drawing. He was the most consummate student I've ever had. And let me tell you something. I lived to become his lecturer at college. And I came and invited him to come to Michael. And he became a teacher. But I remember when he came to Michael, he didn't like the ragging that was taking place. And his mother came. His mother came to rescue him. And I met her coming in on the campus. And I asked her, where are you going? And she said, she has come to collect Desmond. I said, no. He's no more your son than he's mine. He stays at the Michael. Today, Desmond is a consummate educator in industrial arts education and in technology. Those are my fondest memories of ever having a learner in my stead.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Sounds like some great memories. So now as we get into some general questions, as we reflect on your time at St. Mary High School, and this is, in particular for all the students in the 80s, they're going to remember you, while you were there, not just the class of 85. So I'm going to ask each of you the same question. I'm going to allow each person to respond before moving on to the next person. So let's start with you again, Ms. Picklesgill. What 3 words best describe your time at St. Mary High School in the 1980s?
The 3 words: exciting, informative, nurturing. And I'll expand a little on each. It was really exciting for me as a young teacher, and not just a young teacher, but a young past student. I was part of the group down in the bottom staff room that you hear Clarky talking about.
Okay,
And I was
okay.
there part of the time when Clarky was there. And we had some very exciting conversations. We
Yes.
had people like Cecile Sharp and Olivine Osborne who were always at it in terms of arguing. And it was just exciting how we related to each other during the period.
Yeah.
And I said informative because there were different subject areas, current events and other stories of similar ilk that persons would discuss. And so as a young person, you are there and you're learning and you're also putting in your 5 cents worth. And I said nurturing too, because not only did I benefit from some of my teachers who taught me while I was a student at Seminary School, but I also got into nurturing some of the young people that I had in my class. I learned so much from Leonie Johnson. I learned an awful lot from Miss well, why did her name just slip me? Miss Lambert. I would never believe that I forgot her. She was my best teacher. And she nurtured me in a way that I felt very comfortable being on staff with her, even though she was my teacher when I was at school. So yes, those 3 words, they were really, it was a really good time for me as a young person. And I aspired to be like several of those persons I mentioned, because I really looked up to them. And, you know, there was so much there was such a rich environment in that bottom staff room. You know, there was never a dull moment, as Clarky, I'm sure, will tell you later on.
Thank you. Miss Nugent, same question.
Okay. Same question. As Elaine mentioned, nurturing. That was one of one of the words I can use to explain. Because, you know, when you teach the children, when I taught my classes, and you saw them scoring high grades and being satisfied with their grades, and you know that, yes, they're reaching a goal that they had set for themselves, you felt satisfied that, yes, you were molding a young mind to achieve a career that they wanted to achieve, or they're learning something that they will be able to use in their future life. Memorable. I mean, there were times when, you know, you had bad days with the children, you know, not really bad, just that some they just couldn't get through, especially when you're doing like shorthand and you're doing a speed dictation. And you see some of them just drop the pens because, oh, teacher's going too fast and I can't cope. And I said to them, look here, you want to do an exam where you're going to write at 80 words per minute. And our goal is to write at 120 words per minute. So that when you get into that examination, you're just eased back and you're writing at leisure. And they're wondering if you're writing. But when you're finished, you're comfortable.
Yes.
So, Mr. McGibbon, my time at St. Mary School was one that was challenging, very challenging, because Mr. Cargill had the knack of recruiting some of the brightest young people on his staff. And at that time, let me tell you, to name some people: Peter Forbes, Raju, Rod, Morrison. We brought St. Mary School to its peak in terms of output. And let me tell you something. Mr. Cargill invested in science and technology and mathematics. That was his forte. And we did wonders with the students.
Excellent. So the three words that would describe those experiences, what would you pull out of that?
Challenging, nurturing, and let me tell you something. And it was family. The sense of family.
Okay. Excellent. Miss Pickersgill, what drew you to teaching at St. Mary High in that season? Was it like a deliberate choice? Was it like circumstantial? What brought you here or there?
Okay, so St. Mary High is my old school, as we noted earlier.
Yeah.
I went to college and I did my very first year of teaching at Herbert Morrison High School, because I went there with some of my friends from Shortwood. But then, as I said, I always wanted to teach. From I was very young, I wanted to teach.
Yeah.
And having been grown up by my grandparents in St. Mary, and also because there was a relationship, the other party being in St. Mary, I had to think about two things. I had to think about coming back to be closer to my aging grandparents, and also coming back to save the commute from St. Mary to Montego Bay if I
Okay.
had continued there. So when I got back, spoke with Mr. Cargill, and he said, you know, if you are going to teach anywhere in St. Mary, this is your school. So I said, fine.
Okay.
And he said, send me the application, which I did. And so I ended up at St. Mary High School. But
Very
it's
nice.
really where I had wanted to go.
Okay, nice. How about you, Miss Nugent?
Mine was a deliberate choice. As Mr.
Mhm.
Clark had mentioned earlier, when that, after an evening shift came on, that gold uniform,
Yes.
the students came in and, no, not that. There was an evening school. Yes, there was an evening school. And my teacher then, I was in grade 12 B, and my teacher then was um, teaching on the evening school, but the number of students became so big, they could not be taught in one typewriting room. So she reached out to
Okay.
me as a student and she said, I would like you to come and help me in the evening classes to teach typewriting. I said,
What?
but miss, I don't know anything about teaching. And she said, no problem, I'll guide you. So she got this little exercise book and she would write the lesson plans and she would go through them sometime in the day when I had a spare class free session and show me what to do. And so I would turn up for teaching in the afternoons. And it was then that I remembered as a child, I was saying I wanted to learn typewriting. And I took this piece of plyboard and I just wrote the letter of the alphabets on it. And I was there saying typewriting. And then it dawned on me, this is really what I want to do. I want to teach business. And
Yes.
so after evening shift and I finished high school, I said, okay, I'm going to go to CAS, UTech now, and I'm going to do
Yes.
my training. So I went to the business education department and I did my training for 3 years. At the end of that training, I wrote my application to St. Mary High School to be a teacher. And to tell you, I wrote no other application because that is the school I wanted to come back to, my
Okay.
alma mater, to give
Okay.
back what I got. And I got a letter from them. Oh, Miss Nugent, we are so sorry, but we do not have any vacancy right now.
What?
And I said, what? Anyway, I didn't worry, and I still did not make any other application to any other school. I just prayed about it. And like within a week after that, I got another letter. It was Mr. Cargill who was the principal there.
Okay.
And they said, we have a permanent position to
Wow.
give you to be a teacher at St. Mary High School. And you report to work on the 1st of September, 1982. So with, the opening of my interest to this subject, I went ahead, did my training, and returned to St. Mary High School, where I taught there for 7 years.
Very nice. Very nice. Mr. Clark, what's your story?
Sir, Sir Franklin, for me, my best friend in life is a young man by the name of Lenford Laws. We're both from St. Mary. But when we went to college, the Michael, we both did some things that made us who we are today. And we went into the army to be trained as officers. And Lenford
Okay.
wanted to be with the cadet unit. And I wanted all my life to be teaching at St. Mary High School. And we just applied. And Mr. Cargill said, come.
Wow.
And what was more important than anything else is that we lived on campus. You had to have something in you to offer extra for you to be given an apartment on campus. And we lived on campus. And we
Mm,
made a big contribution to St. Mary High School.
very nice. Thank you very much. So, if you can remember, because I have a difficulty sometimes remembering even back when I was going to school, some of the things. But Miss Pickersgill, can you tell us about the students of the 1980s? What set that generation apart? I mean, the drive, the challenge, the character, and even outside the classroom. What were they like? What were we like?
Okay. Just to speak to the 2 years
Yes.
and those students that I had interaction with. I found that they were quite driven. They were focused on what they were at school to do. And even though a number of them had difficulty with the Spanish,
Hmm.
they made the effort. They would try. It's not a case where they were giving up. Um, they had very good manners. I like that
Okay.
about the seminary school students because I've taught elsewhere and
Yes.
I can make the comparison. They had very, very good manners. And above all, they were caring. Those children, I remember one day I was walking from the upper staff room down to the bottom staff room where I normally sat. And it had rained. And I recall two of my boys, um, Sion Gale, I won't ever forget Sion Gale. They came and they, according to them, escorted me down. They held me gingerly and carried me down to enabled me to go safely down because at the time there was mud and all of that.
Yes.
Enabled me to get there safely. But they're just a different set. They would come in and they would bring fruits and they would say, "Oh, Miss, brought apple for you," and that sort of stuff. So they're caring, they were polite, and they were driven. They wanted to do better. And
Mm.
I always encourage them. I said, listen, improvement means that you do better than your parents did. So you have to try your best because I always talk to them. I said, a lot of us are coming from contexts where our parents giving us the last dime or the
Yeah.
last dollar in order for us to be in school. So you
Mm.
can't let them down. You have to give up your best. And these were the kind of talks that I had with them. And they would listen to me. And
Yeah.
I like the fact that they were very um, compliant in most respects. I didn't have to shout at them. And as a young person, they saw me maybe as a big sister because there are some who would come sometimes and hug me or put their hand around my waist and that sort of stuff. And I didn't have a problem with that because a lot of times, if you look at me and look at them, they were taller and bigger than I was at the time. But, I love them. They
Okay.
were really good children.
Very nice. Miss Nugent, what was that like for you?
What Elaine just said, you know, is similar to what I'm going to say right now. Those students were
Okay.
very respectful.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were goal oriented. They met challenges without frowning or anything. Once you encourage them and they realize that what you are teaching them was for their benefit, they went ahead and they did what was necessary to achieve their goal. You know, inside and outside of the classroom, on the road, they walked with dignity, representing St. Mary High School.
Okay.
You never really saw any St. Mary High School students in any brawl. And if there were even fights in the school compound, that was once in a blue moon. Not
Okay.
like now when you hear all these fights and whatever taking place in classrooms.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, there was a student whom I met when I went into the working force, not in teaching, at another institution that I worked, another company. And when we met and he came and he saw me, he said, "Miss Nugent." And I said, yes. You know, when you used to teach and I saw you coming and I knew I was supposed to be in class, I would rush to my classroom because I didn't want you to see me. And I said, but I didn't teach you. I said, Miss, you didn't have to teach me. I just knew that seeing you coming, I should not be there. And I didn't want you to see me there. So I had to rush so that
Very nice.
there's no punishment coming. And I just laughed. I said, that's good. At
Yes.
least you knew what you're about coming to school and you knew that you ought not to waste time. Another student, past student, he came his first day to work at that same company. And when he stepped in, he opened his mouth. You know, he was so surprised to see me there because he's used to me being in the classroom, even though I did not teach him. I taught his eldest sister. But, you know, for what I can remember, even on the road, when
Yes.
you don't even see them and they're passing in vehicles or so. I remember walking on South Avenue one day in Kingston many years ago. And I heard somebody shouting, Miss Nugent! I said, who could this be? Shouting my name. And when I looked, I saw the vehicle passing and the person hanging out and waving. And I said, oh, that was Marilyn Barrett. And she was like a baby. You know, everything you gave her to do, she would say, Miss, I can't do this. But once you sat her down and encouraged her, she went to it and she completed it efficiently and according to how it should be done. They were respectful.
nice.
Once you enjoyed going to work for. I never missed a day going to work, and they'd say to me, but Miss, why you don't take days off? I said, no, if I take days off, you won't have a teacher. And I don't want you to be left without a teacher. Because you need the nurturing for your future. Yes,
Thank
great.
you. Excellent. Mr. Clark.
Mr. McGibbon. Mr. McGibbon.
Yes, sir.
St. Mary High School was the school of choice for all people of St. Mary. You had to pass your exam to come to St. Mary High School. So it was the best of St. Mary that was coming to St. Mary High School. And we don't prejudice against the other schools. It was the best kids that came to St. Mary High School. And even in the worst of times, I know you might remember the name Ambi. I don't know if you remember the person.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. And Bobby Montague, you know, and Mason, who was big in the army. These were kids. They were coming from the best, the family that gave them their life living. The people sell their cows and their goats and so to have these kids. They look forward to see their name printed in the common entrance list.
Yes.
So it was a big thing. If you're coming from St. Mary and you didn't go to St. Mary High School, people look at you in a kind of way. When you go out in the public and ask which school you went to, some people don't answer because you had to be of the best to be at St. Mary High School. Yeah.
Thank you. That's some head shaking different directions, you know what. So this is a very interesting one to ask, and it's because it's interesting to kind of hear this from you. You know, as us being students then, but even know that we're adults, it's kind of good to kind of get this perspective. Who was a colleague, like a fellow teacher, administrator, who positively impacted you and your role as an educator while you're at St. Mary High?
Okay, as colleague, I would say, well, there are several. I would say Cecile Sharp, Cess. I don't know how many persons. Clark, do you remember Cecile Sharp?
Of course, we went to Africa.
Right. God rest her soul. There was also Olivine Barnes.
Yes.
Or Olivine Osborne. She was a very smart. Yeah. And then my best friend, who was my chief at my wedding, Pamela Richards, God rest her soul.
Yeah.
Pam and I went to St. Mary's School to teach at the same time. We started there at the same time, 1980. And Pam, I loved her social skills. Cecile Sharp had a very sharp mind, sharp in name and nature. And Olivine was very thorough. She knew her stuff. She was adept at preparing. And so I learned some of those things from her. In terms of administrator, there is just one Mr. Edwin Uriah Cargill. He was, when I was a student, I used to be scared of him. When I became a member of staff, he was like a father to me. I remember I had a little situation which I won't get into now, and he sat me down and he spoke to me on the matter. And he said, you know, I believe in you. The important thing is for you to hold your head high, do what you're doing. And he was such a wonderful person. He spoke to me not as a principal speaking to a staff member. And we got so close that when I got married, he was the person who was the MC. I still have the picture with him and Mrs. Cargill. He was the MC at my wedding. But he really had a great impact on my life.
Okay, thank you. Miss Nugent, I feel like you're agreeing with some of the things.
Yes, I am agreeing with a lot of what she says. Two main colleagues that encouraged me were my former teacher and co-worker, Mrs. Valerie Bedford, and Mrs. Georgia Jengeli. You know, Mrs. Bedford, she was to the point ensuring that you get your, lesson plans all ready and everything. Very encouraging to me as a young teacher. And as a matter of fact, she was the one who encouraged me to become a teacher based on the experience that she exposed me to in that evening institute. And even Mrs. Jengeli, there was a time when, we used to, the school used to have a shorthand being taught at grade 10, grade 11, and then grade 12. But then it ended up, we're going into CSEC or CXC. They said, okay, just 2 years, grade 10, 11. And the students used to be entered. 3 years, they were entered into a competition, a shorthand competition. And so when it turned to 2 years now, when they did shorthand, she came to me and she said, Angie, you're going to enter the students, I says, but it's just 2 years. Your students did 3 years and they didn't go far. How can I prepare students in just 2 years? And she said, you can do it. And I said, okay, I know you're going to help me. And she encouraged me and I entered the students. And she went with me every trip that we made to whatever competition site. She was there with me. We went to the elimination round right up to the finals in Kingston.
Nice.
And when we got there, the students who entered, we got a trophy, which is left at the school, for the only rural school to reach the finals in the shorthand competition.
Wow.
And each of the students, they got their award for doing so well. I can remember that batch of students, they were so encouraged, they were so goal-oriented, they just wanted to achieve and to say, yes, we did it in 2 years.
Nice. Thank you.
And also, Mrs. Leonie Johnson, she taught English. She was my, a very good encouragement to me. I sat basically in front of her, and whenever I had any difficulties, being a young teacher and I was despondent or anything, she'd look at me and say, you're going to make it. Don't worry. You're going to make it. And
That's
that was
nice.
really a pat on the shoulder, as well as Mrs. Lacker, Gloria Lacker. They were real tower of strength whenever you were feeling like you're not achieving anything with the students. And the students too, they really gave you a surprise at the end of classes or exams when you saw the grades that they achieved after you put in all that sacrifice. It was really wonderful.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Franklin, the person who I admire most as a teacher, my colleague at the St. Mary's School, was a humble man called Seymour Hutchinson. Now, a minister of the gospel.
Yes.
He was humble. He was decent. He was upright. He was a gopher. You could send him to do anything. And he made his name to be someone of deep respect at St. Mary's School. But there was a group of guys who they were my great friends and influence. A group of guys who came from the College of Arts, Science and Technology then, Errol Morrison, Rod and so. We were in a group and we could challenge anybody, any school, anywhere that we were the best in science and technology.
Nice. So we're going to end this section. Thank you very much, Mr. Clark. We're going to end this section with you again, Ms. Pickersgill, asking you, can you recall a special moment with a student or class that made you feel like your sacrifice was worth it all?
Yes, there was a youngster once who had lost his mom, and we had several situations with him because he was challenged financially. And I recall Pam Richards and myself, we decided that we were going to assist this young man. And there were times when he would come and he never had lunch money, and Pam would find a way to make stuff for him. And there are many times when he would walk long distances in order to get home, because sometimes he didn't want to come and tell us that he never had the fare.
Okay.
But when I looked at how that young man struggled, and I saw, for example, what his end of year exam, his end of year results were, I said, can you imagine if this youngster had all the resources, even the
Yeah.
basic resources that he needed? Can you imagine what he would have done? And I kept in touch with him, and he still remembers his Spanish. He is in I think Florida, but he did so very, very well because of the fact that he saw people cared about him.
Nice.
And one day he said, Miss, I see the effort that you and Miss Richards make in order to ensure that I have the basic things that I need, and I won't let you down. And I felt
Nice.
so good, and I saw how well that young man was doing.
Very nice. Thank you. Miss Nugent.
As Elaine just said, there was a student that I had. She was in grade 10. She was having rough times coming to school because the father was not present, and she had other sisters coming to school, and the mother didn't have it, and it was really, really rough for her. But she came, and even when she came, we as teachers, we could identify that all was not well with her financially, coming to school. And when we sat down and we spoke with her, and she explained and everything, we said, okay, everything is going to be all right. And as Elaine said, they assisted that young man. We also, not only myself, other teachers in the business department, we assisted this young lady so that she could finish her schooling. She went through grade 10, she went through grade 11, because, of course, we didn't know anything about it until we met her in grade 10.
Yes.
And then, having completed grade 11, she got very good results in her CXC exams. And she went on to grade 12. Even though it became more difficult for her in grade 12, she stuck to it, and she achieved good grades at the end of grade 12. I'm not sure right now where she is, but we know that at the end of that time, she achieved the education that she came seeking.
Very nice.
And we were happy for her.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Mr. McGibbon, you know the name I'm going to call now. Nobody knew the circumstances under which that young man came to St. Mary High School. He was from a large family, the only one that ever entered high school. And let me tell you something, nobody could ever know that he was ever in hard times. But I know the difficulty he was in. We took care of him in a department till he came to the level where he started to do things to support himself. He would make little coffee tables, photo frames, and things like that. And for all the teachers, he would do little jobs for them and earn his little keep at school.
Nice.
And when I left St. Mary School, all the tools that I had do with joinery. I gave it to him. And today, he's an outstanding cabinet
he is.
maker.
Yeah. So now we're going to move into the lightning round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions before moving to the next person. It's meant to be light and fun, kind of just answering the first thing that comes to mind, but also really what truly comes to mind. So going back to you, Miss Pickersgill.
I'm here.
Grading homework. Satisfying ritual, late night struggle, or I made the student exchange homework books and grade each other.
Satisfying ritual.
Okay. Staff meeting at St. Mary High. Productive gathering, necessary endurance, or something you politely survived.
The first, it was, I found the staff meetings very informative, and they were productive.
Okay. Okay. So your classroom, was it quiet and disciplined, organized chaos, or the student just gave a lot of trouble?
Most times quiet and disciplined, but there were the odd times when, children would have their little fracas with each other.
Yes. The type of teacher you are, disciplinarian, fun teacher, or the nurturer?
I'd say disciplinarian as well as nurturer,
Okay.
because I do not like chaos. And if I'm teaching, I want you to be focused and to give it your attention.
Which one came first?
So both nurturer
Which,
and disciplinarian.
which one would be disciplinarian? Okay, nice. School sports day. Enthusiastic participant, sideline observer, or busy house organizer?
Sideline observer.
What a choice. All right, thank you. Same to you, Ms. Judy. I'm going to get you the same questions. Grading homework,
Okay.
satisfying ritual, late night struggle, or I made a student exchange your homework books and grade each other.
Satisfying ritual.
Ah. Staff meetings at St. Mary High, productive gathering, necessary endurance, or something you politely survived?
Productive gathering.
Okay. Your classroom, quiet and disciplined, organized chaos, or student gave a lot of trouble?
Quiet and disciplined, especially in the subjects of typewriting and shorthand. You had to produce for yourself. You couldn't copy or
Okay.
anything.
The type of teacher, disciplinarian, fun teacher, or the nurturer?
I'd say nurturer and disciplinarian.
Which
Nurturer
one came
being
first?
uppermost.
First. Okay. All right. Cool.
Nurturer.
The school sports day, enthusiastic participant, sideline observer, or busy house organizer?
Busy house organizer.
What? Should I ask
I
which
wanted
house
my
you were
house
in?
to
Which house was that?
Whitehorn.
Okay.
Whitehorn.
So
Student
same
and
questions. Same questions to you, Mr. Clark. Grading homework, satisfying ritual, late night struggle, or I made the student exchange homework books and grade each other?
Most satisfying ritual, sir.
All right. Staff meetings at St. Mary High, productive gathering, necessary endurance, or something you politely survived?
Impactful and participating.
Okay. All right. I'll work with that. Your classroom, was it quiet and disciplined, organized chaos, or students gave a lot of trouble?
Everybody was busy trying to ensure that they would get a good grade. They had their heads down and their hands on.
Okay. The type of teacher you were. Disciplinarian, fun teacher, or the nurturer?
I'm a bit of all of the above, because the subject I taught meant you had to be able to show the kids that there's fun in it. You had to be a disciplinarian because there's safety that they must adhere to. And in terms of what you take from it, we're able to take something home to say, yes, this is what I achieved at school today.
Which one edged out though? If you had to choose.
Mm.
I think the disciplinarian. I remember. Yeah.
I was really a disciplinarian, Frankie. I was really a disciplinarian. Yes. Mm.
School sports day. Enthusiastic participant, sideline observer, or busy house
I
organizer.
was in the I was in the thick of things, Franklin. On the field,
Enthusiastic.
organizing,
Mhm.
cheering, putting things together. I was in the thick of things. The most enjoyable time for school, sports day.
And which house was that?
White on.
What?
Yes.
Miss Pickersgill, which house were you in?
Harry.
Harry. All right. I think I was Clark. I don't really remember. All right.
Mm.
Wonderful. So can you believe it that we have reached pretty much the end where you give your closing remarks? I mean, time really has flown. Just want to give each of you a brief moment to speak freely to your former 80s students. So this is an opportunity to speak directly to the men and women who sat in your classroom. They remember your name. They still carry a lot of things from what you gave them. What would you like to say to them about the time together, about the hopes you have for them, and about St. Mary High School that you both share?
It was 2 wonderful years. I learned a lot from both my colleagues as well as my students.
Yeah.
And based on the kind of foundation, based on some of the things that I learned from people like Mr. Cargill, those set me for life in many respects. I left teaching and went on to work with the Ministry of Education and worked from the level of education officer to assistant chief education officer.
Yes.
And a number of the challenges I would say that I encountered, the foundation that I got at my own high school, St. Mary High,
Yeah.
enabled me to do well in countering or in dealing with those situations that I met. I had the distinct privilege of working with some of the what I'd consider the best students that were in the institution at the time.
Yes.
I have maintained very good relationship and very good rapport with some of these students. I was just recalling last week that one of those students I was looking through my album and I saw her front and center at my wedding when I got married. And I was
Okay.
also at her wedding when she got
Okay.
married.
Okay.
And we have developed bonds and relationships that have really served me well up to this point in time, because I'm still in touch with a number of them and they're all over the world. And each time I go, I'd hear, Mr. Casgill, how is it that things are going? What
Yes.
may I do for you? So,
Yes.
it was a relationship, short though it was, that really assisted me in terms of what I did afterwards with my life. And I
Okay.
would not exchange it for anything. Kudos to Carlene Lambert, who was the best teacher, then the best head of department when I
Okay.
became a staff member. So I have only good and positive to say about St. Mary, because the little challenges that there were, they helped me to do and to cope with all the other little nuances and challenges that came afterwards.
Yes.
So
Okay.
real
Thank
good
you.
training ground for me.
Thank you. You, gent.
Okay. What I have to say to my children, yes,
We still
I'm
are,
really
yes.
privileged. My children, my first set of children, I'm really privileged that I was a part of your educational growth. And I'm very happy to know that most of you, if not all of you, have made good use of the education, the training that was instilled in you at St. Mary
Yes.
High School. when I meet any of you on the road or even see you on Facebook or any of those social media channels, I'm not afraid to communicate with you because I know that you are grateful and thankful for your teachers
Yes.
at St. Mary High School who nurtured you all. And my prayer for you all is that you continue to do your best and be one of the best set of nation builders in this world, whether in Jamaica or whatever land you go. That's what I
Amen.
say.
Thank you. Mr. Clark.
Hey, Franklin,
Yes, sir.
there's a saying that goes, may those who come behind you find you faithful. And I am happy that I was given the opportunity to have influenced the lives of so many wonderful children. And I have passed on the baton on to them. And I hope that they will be giving back to society as best as they can. And I want to thank them for the opportunity they gave me to be able to influence them in their ways. I have had so many good experiences of students that I have taught. I can't forget the circumstances I went at the Norman Manley Airport, and I was coming through the immigration and customs line, and I just felt someone tug onto my attaché case and say, Mr. Clark, please follow me. When I look around, it was a student, I won't call his name because he's still an officer. And he just took me straight through immigration, straight through customs. And as he goes, he said, this is my teacher. This is my teacher. I'm grateful that for those kids. I hope they will continue to serve Jamaica land we love.
Thank you very much. Thank you, teachers. I want to echo all that has been shared today, in terms of St. Mary High as an institution. I believe deeply as a son of the school. Schools don't build themselves. They are built by people who show up and year after year and decide that young people in front of them are worth the sacrifice. And so this is what you did. This is who you are. So on behalf of the class of the 80s and certainly all the classes that you taught,
thank you,
especially our 85ers, just want to say thank you very much. Thank you, teachers. Thank you for the time that we were able to share here, and God bless you. Have a great night.
You're welcome.
Thank you to you, sir. Thank you to you, sir.
A
Absolutely.
great night to you too.
See you soon.
Blessings all. Blessings all.
Yeah, man.
Blessings.